What it do, what it do, what it do. Thank y'all for tuning in to another episode of Run the Receipts. I am your host, Mr. Receipts. I appreciate y'all for being here today. Today we're going to look at a video from the Rose Bowl. Apparently there was a situation with the quarterback for Ohio State. I believe his name is Will Howard. They said because of his religious beliefs, they wouldn't let him on the stage. So what we're going to do is take a look at the video, and then we're going to have a conversation to see if God has anything to do with football and sports in general. Because if we talk about football, trust me, it'll be across the board. So let's go ahead and dive into it.
Rose Bowl's in hot water after they wouldn't let the quarterback of the winning team on stage to accept his rose because, quote, he had thanked God in his acceptance speech. You can see here he's talking to the security guard who eventually tells him, hey, sorry, look, I just can't let you on stage. Keep in mind, literally all of his teammates are currently on stage being interviewed and celebrating while he has to stand to the side and eventually just decides to leave altogether. And when you watch the actual clip of him being interviewed that caused him to be banned from celebrating at the Rose Bowl, it's even more ridiculous.
That's unbelievable. First and foremost, I got to thank my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, for giving me this opportunity.
And so to be blocked from celebrating with his team because he gave a shout out to his religious beliefs is absolutely crazy. I don't care if he even gave it a shout out to non-Christian beliefs. I think anyone in their celebration should be able to shout out the religion that they believe. I also think it's sad that basically all of his team does nothing about it when I feel like this is one of those moments where the team should come together and say, hey, look, it's all of us or none of us. So that's my opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments and make sure to follow if you want to stay up to date with the latest news. The Rose Bowl's in hot water.
So now they're saying the Rose Bowl is in hot water because they didn't let him on stage because of his religious beliefs. Now, I don't know if any of you know this or not, but sports and football has nothing to do with God, and God is not paying attention to football at all. And it's even crazy if you just put your thoughts to it. Let's say, you have Will Howard and he's praying to God for victory and he's praying to God to win a championship. Do you not think or believe that there's other men on the other side who's praying for the exact same thing? Why would God look at Will or the opposing team as someone that's more important than the other people? If both of you believe in God and both of you worship God and both of you believe in the same God, why would God choose you over them? Also, why would God be okay with the clashing of helmets where you can get concussions? Why would God care about the breaking of bones? You can end your career with a serious injury. There's so many things that can happen with you playing sports. So why would God want you to destroy yourself and hurt yourself for a trophy or a team when it has nothing to do with him? He gets nothing out of you playing sports. He gets nothing out of you damaging yourself. He gets nothing out of you after a 10, 15, 20-year career. You can barely get out of bed. You get nothing out of, the women in the stands, the fornication that happens around, the adultery that happens around, the women in the locker rooms. You get nothing out of that. So why would God even pay attention to sports? But yet, we'll pray to the Lord and then we just expect him to accept it because it's something that we want to do without even knowing the history and the research. So we're going to look at a little bit of history so you can get an idea of where sports even came from and what it looked like originally. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of it.
The Greeks had a concept called arete, or excellence. They believed that practicing and becoming excellent in many areas of life was good for you. It was good for your city and it pleased the gods. So how did the Greeks develop arete?
So what you just heard is the word arete. It pleased the gods to get yourself to be in that type of mind state or that type of frame. So that was a gift to their gods, not the God that Will Howard or the ones that you see praying on the sidelines. They are believing that they are praying to the same God, but it's not the ancient Greeks God, because the ancient Greeks God was totally different. Let's continue.
The central place for developing arete in Greek society was the gymnasium. A Greek gymnasium would be familiar in some ways to modern observers. It was a place to develop strength and fitness. There was a stadium for gymnastics and running, and a palestra for wrestling and boxing. It also had ornate showers for hygiene. But the gymnasium was much more than a modern gym, and modern observers would be struck by many differences. Firstly, there were no women. The gymnasium was strictly for men and boys. Secondly, and perhaps most strikingly, There would be much less clothing than you'd see at a modern gym. Almost all Greek sports were done in the nude. Like the gods they looked up to, the Greeks strived for the perfect body and loved to display their fitness and physique as a measure of arete. In fact, the Greek word for naked was gymnos, and it's from here that we derive the word gymnasium and gymnastic. The biggest difference, though, was the ancient gymnasium was aimed at training both the body and the mind. There was structured gymnastic training and ball sport for boys. Young men took part in more military-themed training like javelin, wrestling and boxing. Past this, the gymnasium was also a centre for socialising and learning, where men of all ages went to talk, argue, and where older men would train younger men in mathematics, literature, rhetoric and philosophy.
Sounds like middle school, high school, and college. Because not only did you go to this place to work out, but that's where you went for learning as well. Same thing as we see today.
The Greeks believed developing excellence could best be achieved through competition. They competed on poetry, plays, music, and for the best argument. But the major arena for competition was the games.
So you see that? So they did learning, they did poetry, just like you heard, they did all those things, philosophy, so on and so forth. But the main reason for being at the gymnasium was for games. Just like in college. Yeah, you know, you got the players, they'll attend class sometimes. But the main reason for anyone being there is to play sports. It has nothing to do with learning in itself. It's to play sports, and that's it.
So what sports were included in the games? The first ever Olympic Games was held with only a single competition, a running race over 185 metres. This distance was known to the Greeks as a stade, which is where we get the word stadium, and the event gets its name from too. False starts in the stadium didn't get you disqualified, they got you publicly beaten and shamed in front of the crowd.
So that's what I wanted to address. So the first thing is it's called a stadium. Now it's called a stadium, so you know that's where it got its name from. The original name is a Greek name. Secondly was the embarrassment part. So now if you don't do good, that's where you see on opposing teams, if you're the away team, the crowd is loud, you can barely hear anything, and you feeling the pressure. And then also if you're the home team, if you make a mistake, your own fans will turn against you. They'll boo you. They'll throw things out on the football field. It's the same thing. You got to wear that embarrassment. Then all of a sudden, you know, on social media and all these other places, people will talk bad about you. And you'll hear it for a week until the next game. And then the pressure's on for you again. So it's nothing new under the sun. So now he mentioned the word gymnasium. So I wanted to go back and read it. This is off of the Britannica Encyclopedia. The word gymnasium. It says gymnasium, large room used and equipped for the performance of various sports. The history of gymnasium dates back to ancient Greece, where the literal meaning of the Greek word gymnasium was school for naked exercise. The gymnasiums were of great significance to the ancient Greeks, and every important city had at least one. Usually built by the state, these grew from mere gathering places where exercises were performed to imposing structures with dressing rooms, baths, training quarters, and special areas for contests. So again, it sounds just like middle school, high school, and college. They got their little training rooms, they dressing quarters, they got the place where you can work out. They have everything that you need. Except back then, you didn't have any clothes on. Now they'll try to say just because you have clothes on that is different. But no, that's where it originated from. And it's always going to remain in the same spirit, in the same way. So you trying to make it a more spiritual thing because, you know, you consider yourself to be a Christian or just a person of faith or whatever religion it may be. That which is crooked cannot be made straight. The scripture tells you that. So you can't make something that was meant for lasciviousness. The men were naked. They were having sex with little boys. There was a lot of homosexuality going on. And as a matter of fact, you still have that in the sports today. So you can't change something all of a sudden because you call yourself a believer. Calling yourself a believer means that you're going to have to sacrifice not doing something, even though the crowd is doing it. If you still get caught up in it and things happen, you still got to bear whatever comes with it because you decided to play sports just like anybody else. Because if you praying to the Lord, your ankle's going to break, or your arm can break, or your neck can break, or you can get concussions, or you can lose your job. You can do all those things just like somebody who's a non-believer. But if you're a believer in God, why would God do that to you? Why would he set you up like that? But he doesn't care about sports like you care about sports. Let's continue. I'm going to show you something else. This is actually in the book of Maccabees, and I'm going to try to do some speed reading. You had a priest. His name was John. His job was to be an overseer of the people who called themselves believers. He was supposed to be the overseer, and he's supposed to give the commandments and the laws to the people to keep them on a straight and narrow. But during that time, we were mingled among the other nations, the heathens. And so he began to envy the things that they were doing. And so what he did is he brought the Jews over to the Greeks, and he put them into the same fashions that the Greeks were doing. So I wanted to give you that information, so whenever I start reading, you kind of have a backstory. So let's read. So this is 2 Maccabees chapter 4 and verse 7. You can get it in the Apocrypha, or you can go online and just look up Maccabees, and you can buy the books. It's history. So this is 2 Maccabees chapter 4 and verse 7. It says, "But after the death of Seleucus, when Antiochus called Epiphanes took the kingdom, Jason, the brother of Onias, labored underhand to be high priest." So Jason wanted to be high priest, and he wanted to take over for his brother. So when his brother was no longer here, he got the position, but he got it crooked. He didn't get it the right way. It says verse 8, "Promising unto the king by intercession 360 talents of silver, and of another revenue 80 talents. Beside this, he promised to assign 150 more, if he might have license to set him up a place for exercise and for the training up of youth in the fashions of the heathen, and to write them of Jerusalem by the name of Antiochians." So what he did is he went and paid Antiochus to allow us Jews to be able to participate in the Greekish fashions. And then we went by the name of Antiochians. So just like you got the Pittsburgh Steelers, or the Philadelphia Eagles, or the Ohio State Buckeyes. So he paid them to be a part of their team or franchise in whatever city that he was located in. And then at the time you had King Antiochus. He paid him, and then once he was allowed to participate and brought the Jews with him, the name of them were called the Antiochians. It says verse 10, "Which when the king had granted, and he had gotten into his hand the rule, he forthwith brought his own nation to Greekish fashion, and the royal privileges granted of special favor to the Jews by the means of John, the father of Eupolemeus, who went ambassador to Rome for amity and aid, he took away. And putting down the governments which were according to the law, he brought up new customs against the law." So what he did is he put down the Bible and then brought in new laws, which were the Greek laws, the Greek fashion. So he put the Bible away. "For he built gladly a place of exercise under the tower itself, and brought the chief young men under his subjection, and made them wear a hat." So again, you knew who the Antiochians were because they're part of their uniform were the hats, just like you see it now. If you're a part of a team, you wear their jerseys. If you go to a championship game and you win the championship, what do you put on after that? You put a hat on, and you represent your team, wherever team you play for. So we were doing the same thing back then. And remember, when all this was taking place, it was nudity going on. Verse 13, "Now such was the height of Greek fashions, and increase of heathenish manners, through the exceeding profaneness of Jason, that ungodly wretch, and no high priest." Because remember, we just read or just watched the video, and the video showed you what was going on. The nudity that was going on, the homosexuality that was going on, all those things was going on throughout this time. We were witnesses of it because the Greeks were doing it. So in order to participate with the Greeks, we also had to do the same things that they were doing. So we put the Bible down, and then we just partook in the things that they were doing. Verse 14, it says that the priests had no courage to serve any more at the altar, but despising the temple and neglecting the sacrifices, hastened to be partakers of the unlawful allowance in the place of exercise. After the game of discus called them forth, not setting by the honors of their fathers, but liking the glory of the Grecians best of all. You go out there and you see all the fans yelling and cheering and they calling your name. You got statues up and you got the Grecians telling you your name is going to live forever. And there's a wall with all the great athletes that have came before you and during the time, and they'll encourage you that you can be the ones after this and you'll always be remembered. But guess what? I guarantee none of y'all can tell me who these athletes are that played back then. Your name doesn't mean anything after a few generations. So we did that all for naught. Verse 15, it says, not setting by the honors of their fathers, but liking the glory of the Grecians best of all, by reason whereof sore calamity came upon them. For they had them to be their enemies and avengers, whose custom they followed so earnestly, and unto whom they desired to be like in all things. So now we wanted to be just like them. Because think about it, now all of a sudden you see women and parties and drinking, and you got a name for yourself. So they became envious of those things, and instead of doing what God commanded us to do, we decided to follow them, the ways of the heathens, and do what they were doing. Verse 17, for it is not a light thing to do wickedly against the laws of God, but the time following shall declare these things. Now when the game that was used every faith year was kept at Tyrus, the king being present. So what this is going into the Olympics, every faith year, meaning every 5th year. Now we know it's every 4th year, but back then, every 5th year, you would go to Tyrus and you would compete in the Olympics. From every different location across the world, everybody would meet up there and play. Verse 19, this ungracious Jason sent special messengers from Jerusalem who were Antiochians. They were part of the teams, like if you was the Philadelphia Eagles or, you know, the Steelers or whatnot. So you would send them there. It says to carry 300 drachms of silver to the sacrifice of Hercules, which even the bearers thereof thought fit not to bestow upon the sacrifice, because it was not convenient, but to be reserved for other charges. But you see that? You would have to bring sacrifices to the Olympic Games, and those sacrifices were for Hercules, not God, but Hercules. You can't change it into God now. You think the people out there you just read, or I just read it for you, that the people had to forsake God to go out there. The reason why you got to forsake God is because you're going to see things, and you, whether you agree with it or not, you're going to have to look the other way. If you hear speech, or if you know of sexual things going on, if your teammates, you do know if your teammates are out here fornicating and sleeping around, you know you're not supposed to look the other way. If y'all are a team and then you call yourself a believer, your job is to correct them. But if you play sports, you just look the other way because, oh, that's not me. I believe in God and that's my faith, but it doesn't matter what my teammates do because they can do whatever they want to do. It don't work like that. It doesn't work like that with God. So when people try to say that, you know, call themselves believers and they're still doing the things of the heathens, the custom of the heathens, then you got to make a decision. And again, all these sacrifices and all these idols that you worship at the time, like here was Hercules. If you believe in God and then they tell you that, no, this is about Hercules, then what are you going to do? You can't mingle the two together. It doesn't go like that. Now, let's go to Bill Cooper and what he says about sports in general.
That's why they pay athletes these fantastic salaries. I was listening to the radio the other day. They just contracted to pay one player on one team $6 million a year. Can you believe this?
And why is that?
It's the Roman circus. What does the emperor do when the people become restive, and when the people are asking questions, and when the people don't like the policies of the emperor? He sends them to the circus. He creates a circus. He builds a giant coliseum. Then he begins to throw the Christians to the lions, and he has great chariot races and football games and basketball games, all to keep the idiots preoccupied. with things that don't mean anything in the scheme of the entire world, so that they don't have the time to learn what the truth is, so they don't ever get smart enough to learn how they're being manipulated, so they don't ever question the emperor.
Everything that he's saying is correct. Sports is just a distraction from reality. They pay you a whole lot of money, and because they pay you a whole lot of money, now you got to go into your playbook and you got to study. Then you got to go and work out. Then you got to figure out how you're going to eat. Then you got to get with your teammates and, build camaraderie with them. There's so many things that you're doing that you're not thinking about serving the Lord. It's a distraction. Or if you do call yourself serving the Lord or loving the Lord, he only gets a small amount of time, because the rest of your time has to go towards whatever they're paying you to do. They're paying you millions of dollars to do what they need you to do. And you're going to have to conform to whatever it is that they tell you to do. You don't have a choice in the matter. And like I said, you're going to see a lot of things that's going to force you to look the other way. But then you'll still say that you love God. But God does not care about football, and he doesn't care about sports. So it always tripped me out whenever it's like nails on a chalkboard. Every time I hear people after games and they do that, it's like, you guys have no idea that God does not care about what you're out here doing. And when he returns, for those who do believe in that, you're not going to be tossing no footballs around. It's not happening. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe. I appreciate all of you. Until next time, deuces.